Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2026 midterms Senate map based on if Donald Trump kept his promises and he did not fail to keep them. And that would basically mean a strong incumbent party in the White House for the Republicans in the future 2026 midterm elections. So not quite 2028, but in the midterms specifically. But before we get started with the Senate map, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss on my content, press the like button, share this video. Don't forget we have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section if you are interested. So right now on your screen, you are looking at the new 2026 Senate map for the midterms. And I know this is early, but let's just do a scenario in which what if Donald Trump did not fail to keep his promises. Let's just say he did exactly that, meaning he would have a high approval rating, and that would mean a strong incumbent party White House, which would also potentially play a role in the 13 keys as well. So let's begin filling out the solid red and blue states. Montana is not going to be close. That's going to be safe. Wyoming, Idaho, Nebraska, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, right? All these states, as we all know, are solid blue or solid red for either party. South Carolina, West Virginia, you name it, even Florida as well. I mean, you saw Rick Scott have an outstanding victory. I believe he got double digits in this year's, elections, 2024. He did almost as well as, Marco Rubio and Donald Trump on the general election level actually got about 14% overall statewide in Florida overall as a whole. So you can also argue and make the case that Florida is no longer likely. It is now solid red, and especially considering 2026, the state will even shift further to the right. It's at this point a lost cause for the Democratic Party. The state as a whole really abandoned the Democrat no matter who they run, and basically all their candidates in Florida is really just bad. I mean, the Democratic Party of Florida is just bad. Same thing goes for the Republican Party of Michigan when it comes to the Senate. Obviously, the general election is a little bit different as it is expected to be more competitive as usual. And then the solid blue states for the Democrats will be Illinois, no surprise here. Minnesota, obviously, they should win that by double digits in the 2026 midterm elections for the Senate, as well as Oregon as well. This state actually shifted further to the left. Surprisingly, the West Coast, specifically Washington and Oregon, in this election cycle, shifted further to the left for Kamala Harris. So in the future, those states will not be close. Republicans should not get their hopes up in the West Coast at all. Maybe California, but that also was a big victory for Kamala Harris, even though you can argue it was closer than in the past. I mean, Donald Trump managed to get past 40%, I believe, of the overall vote share in California. And then you have Alaska. Obviously, that's not going to be close at all. And then Colorado, this state, Kamala actually did surprisingly well, a little bit more than I expected. I had her winning the state by about 8 to 9 percentage points, actually close to 10. She won it by around there. Obviously, it wasn't close at all. So Colorado, in terms of the trends and the shifts, will not be close, especially in 2026. The state actually shifting further to the left, and Republicans are not doing well at all in the state of Colorado. So it's not going to be competitive for the Senate in the midterms. And as far as New Mexico goes, I mean, you can say the state in terms of the trends in this election for 2024, Donald Trump managed to get it within 6 percentage points. I mean, it was still likely for Kamala Harris, but in 2026, I expect this state to go a little bit more further to the left because I don't think the Republicans will nominate a strong candidate like Donald Trump. Maybe someone more weaker, and maybe the Democrats can possibly nominate someone stronger than Kamala Harris, which would really do well for them in New Mexico. I don't expect the state to be competitive like some Republicans are saying. I think New Mexico is likely and even safe for Democrats. So that's not going to be competitive. And Martin Heinrich actually won re-election for the Senate for the Democrats in 2024. And guess what? It wasn't competitive. So I guess you can use that race for 2026 and say the same thing, considering that Republicans will probably nominate weaker candidates. And it's not a general election. It's a midterm in 2026, which means Republicans don't turn out as much. Maybe because, Donald Trump is the incumbent president, maybe they can, instead of 2022, which they just completely didn't. But usually in terms of midterm elections, Democrats typically have more turnout. I mean, if you want to take a look at 2022, for example, But I think the Senate map overall really favors Republicans in 2026 and the future, as it did in the 2024 elections. I think the map is built for the GOP to win it again, retain control, because they obviously won it in this election for 2024. But they are favored to do it again in the 2026 midterms. You have Delaware, obviously, New Jersey. These will not be close. Obviously, it's the East Coast, very Democratic. You have New Hampshire, which I don't think is going to be close. But in terms of the governorship in this state, it is actually pretty Republican. Last time New Hampshire had a Senate race was back in the 2022 midterms, in which Dan Bulldog obviously underperformed with a number amount of Republicans, obviously from Arizona, Kari Lake, Pennsylvania, Dr. Oz, Herschel Walker from Georgia as well, you name it. So New Hampshire Senate race will go to the Democrats, but I don't think it will be safe. I think it could be likely. But actually, you can make the case and say that New Hampshire is actually going more blue, because in 2024, Kamala still managed to win it by 3% when all these other states, including the blue wall, actually shifted towards the right, and basically the nation overall as a whole really shifted towards the right. Even Donald Trump won the popular vote as well. New Hampshire actually still was blue by a lead margin for Kamala, and she's also a weaker candidate. So considering that she's not the best candidate, maybe if they nominate someone decent, New Hampshire will actually go further to the left. That's my opinion. And then you have Virginia. Obviously, Tim Kaine won it in 2024, defeating Hung Kao. That was by a likely margin. I think it can be likely once again. You have Iowa. This is a solid red state. It's not going to be close or competitive at all. You have Ohio. Obviously, there were some rumors that someone like Vivek Ramaswamy would replace J.D. Vance, who is now the VP. That ended up not happening. Obviously, Vivek is now in the Trump administration, working with government efficiency with Elon Musk as well. We'll see how that all pans out. But as of right now, Ohio is basically a likely Republican state. And obviously, we don't know the candidates for a majority of these races, if not, I think all of them. And Maine, obviously, is a solid blue state in terms of how the Senate goes. Obviously, you do have that second congressional district, which is usually always Republican. And then you have the state of Michigan. We don't exactly know these candidates, but as we all know, in this election for 2024, Alyssa Slotkin barely won by under percentage point. I believe the margin was 0.3%, barely defeating Mike Rogers, who you can argue actually could have won because it was just that close. And a blue wall state, which Democrats are supposed to win by much more in terms of the Senate than what they did. I mean, 0.3 for Alyssa Slotkin. Mind you, she wasn't even the incumbent. I mean, it's not good news for the Democrats. But this is 2026, the midterms. Maybe Democrats can do slightly better. Yet again, this is not a general election. So I think Michigan could be lean blue for the Democrats in the upcoming future 2026 midterms. For an early prediction, even if Donald Trump had a strong incumbent White House party, and let's say he kept his promises like he said he would, I still think Michigan will go to the Democrats. It won't be by a large margin. It's going to be close, as it was a swing state in 2024, and always as well. And then you have the state of Texas. Actually, the governorship in Michigan was actually very blue in the 2022 midterm, so maybe that's a different story. But as far as the Senate race goes, it's going to be closer. So Texas, obviously, as we all know, Ted Cruz just won this by a margin of, I believe, double digits. He did extremely well. Obviously underperformed Donald Trump, but not by a huge margin. But he did very well. He won it by a likely to, you can argue, solid margin. Depends where your margins are. I mean, I believe he got over 10 percentage points, cracking double digits. And Texas really surprised me. This state was one of the numerous ones that actually shifted further to the right, with Florida as well. And I think no matter who the Democrats or Republicans nominate, I mean, this time they nominated Colin Allred, who was he did not perform well at all. He actually underperformed my expectations. I thought Ted Cruz would win by 4 to 5 points, and he actually won by more of that. So I think Democrats don't really have a good candidate to run in Texas. And, the whole border situation really helped Republicans in terms of momentum, which if they do fix the border, I don't think that will be as much as an issue in 2026 midterms as it was in this election, which could benefit Democrats because Republicans don't have the border issue to run on, which could maybe save Democrats, but still, regardless, that's just simply not going to be enough. Therefore, I think Texas will be likely for the Senate in the 2026 midterms. And then we have two states Republicans already win. Obviously, they pass 50 seats, and then JD Vance is the tiebreaker. So they'll most likely win control again. I think Georgia is really tricky. At this point, it's 50-50. For either candidate, we don't know the candidates, but as of right now, Democrats actually hold control of the Senate in Georgia. Obviously, you have Raphael Warnock, who won in the 2022 midterms, defeating Herschel Walker, like I just mentioned earlier. He's a very strong Democratic candidate. And Georgia was actually one of the closer states in the 2024 election. Yet again, when most of the nation shifted towards the right, actually all of it pretty much, Georgia actually, even though it still flipped to Donald Trump, obviously it was a flip, it was still very close. Matter of fact, I believe Georgia was literally as close as Michigan or maybe Pennsylvania was. Donald Trump only won it by a margin of exactly 2 percentage points. And mind you, that's Donald Trump. You can say he's a stronger candidate. So if Republicans nominate someone, more established, maybe, less, I would say, strong as Donald Trump, and, then I think Georgia could possibly go to the Democrats once again. I think the main reason Georgia is shifting towards the left, including in the 2024 election, I expect it to get only bluer in 2026, which would really boost Democratic support, is because Atlanta, the metropolitan area, obviously the suburbs in there as well, among African American voters. And what people have been saying is that Donald Trump performed way better among African American voters in the 2024 election compared to what he did in 2020. Well, that's actually, it is true, but I think it's overhyped, because he actually really did not improve among African American voters, especially women. Like I believe 90% of them literally voted for Kamala Harris. It was like 85. He only got like 15% of the overall African American vote share, and that was mainly due to men. It wasn't really women. And I think it only gets better for Democrats. So I think this one's truly toss-up. But for the sake of this video, I'm not going to leave it as toss-up because that will just be boring. I'm going to say tilt Democrats. And then as for North Carolina goes, I do think that this is very competitive. As we all know, Mark Robinson on the governorship. I know this is not, this is the Senate, not the governor's race. But on the governorship, he did absolutely terrible. Josh Stein crushed him. I believe he won by a solid blue margin of 14 percentage points. I mean, I expected Josh Stein to win by a likely margin of 8%, but that was not near, obviously, the big 14 points that he got it by. I do think North Carolina in the future is actually, it's as if right now it's steady, but I do think it will potentially lean towards the Democrats. Now, the title of this video is what if Donald Trump kept his promises? In that case, if Donald Trump, kept his promises, then I think Republicans will hang on to North Carolina in the 2026 Senate midterms. And you can make the case in Georgia if Donald Trump, has a higher approval rating, in 2026, then maybe Republicans can manage to win Georgia. But North Carolina and Georgia, as well as Michigan, would probably be the only 3 close competitive Senate races in the 2026 midterms. So if you were to say which 3 states would be the ones to keep an eye on in 2026, the only competitive ones I see, or being close at all, is Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia, right? Texas is not going to be close. Virginia is not going to be close. And Florida as well, it's not going to be close. So you name it. So 53 seats for the Republicans, the Democrats 47, which would basically be the exact same. No improvement at all for the Democrats. As, the same thing as 2024, Republicans still won 53 seats. And the one state that I missed was Pennsylvania. I did not think McCormick would win, and guess what? He ended up winning. And Democrats actually were lucky that they held on to Michigan and Wisconsin and Nevada, which they all could have actually lost those states. And you can argue and make the case that if Kari Lake did not run, then any other Republican, no matter who it is, would defeat Ruben Gallego, because only won by a little over a percentage point. So in this scenario in which Donald Trump keeps his promises, they get 53 seats once again. Now, if he does not keep his promises in a regular prediction, not in this scenario, I think maybe Democrats can win Georgia, North Carolina. But even with that, guys, even with those 2 states, they're still not quite at 50. And even 50 won't do it because of J.D. Vance tiebreaker. They would be short at 49 to 51 seats. So I really think that Republicans at this point have over a 90% chance of winning the Senate from 2 years out. I know it's really early, but I just don't see, as of right now, how Democrats can win. and I know we don't know all these candidates, but they're most likely going to lose the Senate. Now, as far as the House goes, that's a different story. So that's pretty much it. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Do you think that Republicans will win the Senate map in 2026? And do you agree with me that this map really favors the Republicans heavily as it did in 2024, not so much in the 2022 midterms? So one last final reminder to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out my content, press the like button, share this video, don't forget we have memberships. You can find the links to that in the description section if you are interested. Thank you everyone for watching.